Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Health, Wisdom, and Wealth Show. I'm Velin Hawkins, your host, and I am excited to be in this conversation about how to amplify the message that your body is trying to tell you. Have you ever felt like your body was trying to say something and you were like, okay, I'll hear you later, or not now because, or could that be right? Could that be really what I'm feeling? And trying to interpret it is one thing, but do we actually even have the conscious, unconscious opportunity to hear what our body is trying to tell us? Today, I'm so excited to welcome our guest, Jennifer Strother. And she is, I'll tell you a little bit about her because she's done some phenomenal work here. She's CEO and owner of ThriveWell Solutions. She's a certified functional nutritionist that dedicates her time and practice to help others discover the root cause to unexplained symptoms so they can stop guessing and start thriving to enjoy the energy and just everyday life. That's what we all want. After dabbling in nutrition for many years, Jennifer's family was forced to change the way they viewed health and nutrition when her young son was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disease, MCAS, in 2016. Nutrition and gut healing were the only option. Now, we've heard a lot of things that doctors say are incurable. And there are some things that doctors say that they just don't know what to do about them. And so Jennifer went on this wellness journey, and it's been a huge blessing to her entire family. And she's passionate to help other families discover the same success through proper nutrition and absorption. The extreme health symptoms caused her to evaluate food triggers, sensitivities, gut health, proper nutrition, and ultimately start a journey to heal the gut and the immune system. She now runs a program, Heal Your Gut, Heal Your Body, to offer a solid foundation to fight symptoms and heal the body from the inside out. She helps her clients relieve frustration, pain, and stress as they develop a personalized plan to target inflammation, fight digestive system symptoms, food sensitivities, skin issues, hormone imbalances, and weight management. And she uses the same protocols in what she teaches. And what her own family has used to improve tremendously after battling multiple autoimmune conditions, POTS, MCAS, ADHD, gut disorders, hormone imbalances, thyroid, cancer, blood sugar inflammations, acne, and the list could go on. I'm sure that you can really empathize and relate to when you have something going on. You've heard it, but how do you articulate it so that others will know what you're experiencing too? And even before you get there, you've heard it, but you don't know what it's saying to you. Well, we're going to be in that conversation. And I'm really just so grateful that Jennifer has brought her functional nutrition background and her gut health specialty to us today to talk about. So welcome, Jennifer. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Velin. It was awesome to be here. As you were rattling off all of the diseases, it sounds like our family's a hot mess. But raising 5 children, we have experienced a lot in our home. And it's just so empowering to live life in a wellness journey when you can find hope. And when you can find hope to just like put everything else aside and start focusing on the positive. So that's really what we have done. And that's what I love to empower others to do. So thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for being here because we have, many guests come on and they talk about their specialties, but and many of whom have started because of the issues that they've experienced personally. And for you, I cannot imagine what it feels like to have a child who is going through something and you don't even know how to help them. It's tough enough as adults for us to express what's happening in our bodies, what we're feeling that's discomfort and painful. But how does a child do that? And before we actually get to that, maybe you'll kind of wrap up with that piece, but tell us a little bit about how you got on this journey to wellness. Was it just this issue with your son, or do you always have this desire, this open heart for helping people?
I have. So my journey began very, very young. My mother was diagnosed with cancer when I was 4. And, really caring for her over the years. And I come from a health care background, a lot of nurses in our family, and really thought that would be my path, is to go into nursing as well. But I married a military spouse. So being in business, so I did go through nursing school, and then going into business offered me to work more in a business entrepreneurial setting, to where I was going through the government and being able to travel with him. So took some time to do that, but I've always had been an empath, always had this desire to fix things, and to keep searching for answers until we can get to that solution. So that's part of, why it's ThriveWell solution. And I love living life to the fullest. So it's like when I see people suffering, I'm always the one coming in going, okay, how can we fix this? How can we fix the situation so it can be the best that it can be, not necessarily settling for answers. And my mom fought cancer for 35 years. So settling was not an option. She wanted to raise her children, which she did. She was able to see all of her grandchildren. Just her fight, her desire to live life to the fullest, and then wanting that in others, and wanting others to know that there is hope. You are not bound and confined to a diagnosis. Like, that is not the end result. That needs to give you the motivation and the desire to really say, what can I do to overcome this, rather than what do I need to do to just survive day to day. Putting a Band-Aid over the root cause of something is almost like you're settling for acceptance. And I just want everyone to live, to know that you can live in such a vibrant way.
That's beautiful. And tell us how it is that, you stepped into this really big aspect of it all, with your son having issues, but did he immediately get diagnosed? How did you really understand what the problem was to be able to even understand that, doctors couldn't really help him?
Yes. We tend to question our days a lot as human beings. It's like, why am I going through this right now? And I know part of my mom's journey was nutrition. I mean, she focused a lot on nutrition, to the point where she didn't have to take all the medicine that was recommended. She would pick and choose, and say, what can I do holistically? And then also, one of our older children had battled ADHD, and we had overcome that by taking away some, the dyes, the sugars, and really having a nutritional focus there as well. So I really took some of that background. And when my son was very sick, we actually started being in and out of the hospital when he was 9 months old, very frequent in and out of the hospital, and no answers, giving us a breathing treatment, sending us home. And then, the next night, again, just really some respiratory issues, constant ear infections. And we traveled outside of our local area to even try to get answers to questions. And ultimately finding nutrition as our answer was just because there's not always a medical diagnosis, or there's not always a Western medicine solution. So I really knew that I had to dive in and learn everything that I could. When we would go to a dietitian at the hospital, the food guide pyramid that they would give, I could already see things on that food guide pyramid that his body was triggered by, that his body was reacting to. And I knew that the guidance that was giving was not something that was going to be able to help us when we got back home. And ultimately, as moms and women, we tend to be the gatekeepers of our home. And we're the ones bringing in the cleaning supplies, bringing in, because cleaning supplies have toxic and chemical triggers and exposures as well. We're the ones, most of the time buying groceries and being that gatekeeper in our home. And I knew ultimately that I had to ensure that my family could live that comfortable way each and every day. At the time, we were even battling getting him into preschool, keeping him there day to day. I knew school was on the horizon, and we needed to make sure that he could live that life just like every other child. And I had a doctor in Atlanta, Georgia. We went to Atlanta, Georgia, and I remember walking into that appointment. We had traveled there, paid for hotels, and I had this huge desire, even knowing what I knew, to find a quick fix. I wanted that doctor to tell me he could give us something to fix my child. And that's normal. Okay, that's very natural. We're going in and we just want it to be finished. And he looked at me and he said, the only way you're going to be able to solve this is through diet and through nutrition. And I left that appointment crying for a few hours and then empowered. And I thought, okay, I'm going back to school. And that is when I went back to school, because I wasn't finding, we had spent about 4 years searching for hope, searching for answers. And I wasn't finding what I needed. We had gone all over the Southeast. Our next trip, I went to Chicago. I did not take my child. So our next trip was to Chicago. I went and listened to them, and the doctors kind of tell me the same thing. But again, when you go into a dietitian, they're bound to FDA guidelines, restrictions, that food guide pyramid. And really with food sensitivities, food intolerances, nutrition, and when you're listening to your own body, you can't follow a guide like that. You've got to make your own personalized plan. And that is part of what I do now, is I help people make that personalized plan.
That is amazing. And definitely empowering. And I want our audience to understand too that, we may have to battle with something that we don't understand. And don't be surprised if the doctor doesn't understand. Doctors typically don't understand nutrition. And, I am one of the advocates now that's really strongly advocating for more nutrition classes in medical school. And I'm working with a couple of physicians now who are on that mission, because if we are relying on our doctors to give us the information, we're very limited in what it is that we're going to find. And so we have to self-empower. We have to be among those who additionally support us and empower us, and even join in us in this educational journey, because it is about finding the right information. And a lot of us don't even think the right information is out there, but trust me, it is. There's decades upon decades of information that supports diet and lifestyle as being the cure to so many illnesses that we're suffering from now. And so as you're looking at, with your family, with the people that you work with, what's one of the main things that lets you know that while somebody has certain symptoms, where to start looking for the
Oh,
answer, cause?
yeah. So, I heard a physician one time say, he was talking about credentials and experience and all these things. And he said, the biggest credential is going to come from the victory that you win in your own walk. And I say that because I shared a little bit of my journey, and to some it sounds exhausting and overwhelming. We lost a lot of friends during those few years because it felt like we had nothing positive but overwhelming stories. You become where you're in isolation, but through all of that, I really found where our gut is, and you hear it over and over, but when you experience the true transformation and you see it in your child and in your other family members, when we started a gut health focus to heal my youngest child, everyone in the home benefited. My skin, even at the age of 40, was not clear. Or I guess at the time I was in my late 30s, but I was still battling adult acne after having children, and that hormone fluctuation and the thyroid fluctuations and the adrenals from the stress. And it was unbelievable. I had done so much work to try and fix my own body, but until I fixed my gut, the communication and that work it didn't do anything. Like it was just like I was on this uphill battle. But as soon as we started focusing on our gut, I look at it as it's like an electrical box in your home. If the electrical box is not on, nothing's communicating. So it's like everything else started communicating. And within 6 months of working on my gut, I saw my hormones and my thyroid and my skin. I saw, one of my child's constipation issues where we used to sit on the floor and read books just to go potty, completely resolve by changing diet and nutrition. And like I had mentioned, the ADHD being, you feel like you're doomed when you're given one of those diagnoses, but honestly, run as fast as you can in the opposite direction and find the ultimate solution and that ultimate healing. So I work with my clients on looking at a gut focus because it really reduces the inflammation in the body. It allows our cells to have proper communication. It opens those communication channels for hormones, for insulin, affecting all sugar metabolism. So like my one daughter that was diagnosed with POTS, let me just say, a diagnosis can give you a direction for research. Okay. It's not the end all be all, but when she was having a lot of fainting episodes, and she was actually diagnosed as pre-diabetic by her pediatrician. And I looked at that pediatrician and I'm like, her blood sugar is so low, but I will please you by pricking her finger at every meal. And we did it. And her blood sugar never got over 80, which meant her resting blood sugar was extremely low. But her cortisol was, and this is as a child.
Wow.
Her cortisol was so low that it had triggered a false high A1C. But had the pediatrician not ran some blood work and diagnosed us with a pre-diabetic, I wouldn't have kept digging. And it was after that false high A1C to discover the low cortisol. And then ultimately, kind of in that direction of the autoimmune condition of POTS. And that gives you a clear direction on how to start healing your body and how to start treating your body different. And, maybe you've been told you don't need a ton of salt for cardiovascular concerns, but for this type of concern, you need a lot of electrolytes and salt, but you need the right ones. So really working on an internal focus. And one thing you mentioned about education that I really want to say is, even for myself going through nursing school, no, there's not a lot of nutrition classes. But if we go back 40 years, our food supply was also not as poor as what it is today.
Mm-hmm.
So the need for those classes weren't necessarily there when a lot of the textbooks were being written. So I
Mm-hmm.
love that you're on a journey, because those textbooks need to be rewritten to adhere and really focus on what our food supply does not offer today.
Mm-hmm.
And that's proper nutrition. It's really hard to get those micronutrients, and we have to work hard on it. So if you're, just having a focus on nutrition, period, allows the body to have that.
I'm so glad you brought that in because you're right. And we, in the educational system, the textbooks are rewritten periodically to include whatever is needed for updates and relevancy and additional information. And yet, something so important like our medical doctors and the studies that the things that they learn, the studies that they actually have to jump into and discuss and debate and really even research themselves,
Mhm.
don't include nutrition. It's like, well, I know where it comes from, and I'll state where it comes from because the majority of funding for medical schools comes from those who have also influenced the curriculums,
Mhm.
and they have not been food suppliers. They have not been live food suppliers. And one of the reasons is that, like um, food, plant food is the purest form of food source,
Mhm.
and not genetically modified, not any of the things that again these big dollars are trying to do to influence how food is grown. Um, Food is the natural source. So
Yeah.
why would you abandon it for something synthetic? And now we're even seeing more of the pill solutions being dubbed as whole plant ingredients and the like, which you have to question because you can't see what's in there.
Right.
And, it's dried and sourced from somewhere that could very well be GMO.
Mhm.
Um, and so, we have to take it upon ourselves to look for these natural sources. And so let me ask you, do you go to the farmer's market every week to get your fresh produce? Do you do more raw food eating than cooked plant food eating? Tell us a little bit about that piece of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Variety. We do a variety. I try to get my children to eat raw vegetables, but it's not, it needs to be personalized, to be honest with you. Some of my kids can tolerate raw vegetables. If your gut is not healthy, raw vegetables are hard on the digestive system. So it's really, when we're talking about healing the gut, we have to look at where the person is in their journey. My son in particular is able to eat, a lot more good organic vegetables. And I'm a lover of farmers markets. Usually when we travel out of town, I even look to see, like I know that one of our last beach trips, I look to see when their local farmers market is, and I want to arrive on that day or the day before. So the first morning I can get up and go to the farmers market and buy our produce and even our meat and our fish from the locals. So it's extremely fresh, and typically from a farmer, you're not getting all the hormones and antibiotics, or you can at least avoid those more. I also love, looking for those other suppliers. There's some good box companies right now to where when it's the off season, you can order those. And I get creative because we're a busy family and everybody plays sports. So, when somebody's like, oh, I don't have time to cook, I'm right there with you. I'm like a 4 or 5 ingredient type person. I really like cooking my meats though, because I can really preserve those healthy fats, and the bone broth or anything that needs to go with it. I know a lot of plant-based eaters wouldn't necessarily do the meat, but for someone who's looking to heal the gut, sometimes we, do look at those healthier meat sources to increase iron absorption, and look at that. But we love both our raw and our cooked vegetables, and buy from, and I buy from our local grocery store sometimes. I encourage you to shop organic. I hear people say from time to time, how can you even trust organic is organic? And the quick and the real answer is we really can't trust that it's 100%, but it has to be better than the alternative. Okay. And that's really, it's like, do the best you can, because the stress and the anxiety over trust is going to hurt your adrenals. It's going to hurt your hormones. Like, let's just really protect the body the best that we can. So it's like, go do the best you can. I'm a big advocate of, bringing everything home, washing it as much as you can, looking at the dirty dozen, making sure that those are the ones you're specifically buying organic. Even if you can't buy everything organic, really looking at those.
Awesome. And do your kids actually get involved with making some of your dishes, whether, it's the salad or the whatever? Do they have any favorites? One of the things that I'm really becoming more conscious about is bringing the kids piece into the conversation, because you mentioned it, as women, we're the gatekeepers of our homes. And if we have children in them, especially if we've had the forming years, haven't been as healthy as they could. And our children are already experiencing the effects of that.
Yes.
How do we, bring our kids into being involved in that? And do your kids kind of participate in that at all?
They do. They do. And what I grabbed while you were asking that question is mainly because there's 2 things. Kids thrive on information. Okay. They're in that age group. I mean, they're going to school every day. So learning is a natural thing for kids. Okay. They're in that environment every single day. And I think as parents, sometimes we don't give them enough credit for helping them understand the why. Okay. And especially if you were raised on, oh, just do this because I said so. But one thing that I do with my children, and I encourage other families to do with theirs, is a simple food sensitivity test, to help their body see how the body thrives on different nutrition. And, in this area here that you see is beans and peas. There are some beans that you can see on this one that had a higher spike than others, but kids love looking at this information. So if they know, like, okay, mommy, and it's a simple finger prick. It's not like you don't have to go to the doctor and get vials and vials of blood. But and if they see the process, okay, mommy got a finger prick of blood, and this is the result we got. This is why mommy's telling you that these beans are good for you, because your body was all in the bright green, and it sees that your body's thriving on these nutrients and they're not causing inflammation in the body. But yes, my kids get very involved in making the dinners too, and the selection. I always ask them, name 4 vegetables that you want me to buy for this week's meals. And I say 4 because it's easy for them to break down. They may not have 4 they love, but I ask them to tell me 4. Now, mine are always green beans. But we've also gotten really into like Brussels sprouts and broccoli and, asparagus, but they'll come up with cabbage or, the carrots or whatever it is. If I bring home those 4 that they requested, then I don't get pushback when I put them on the table. And so it's the buy-in, making them feel like they played a part in what's coming onto the table. Now I'll usually bring in onions and peppers and, things that you might see in a stir fry or a fajita, but I like to show them that I paid attention to their request. And I will say that when we first started out, it was hard to come up with 4. Now, with the kids that are left at home, it's hard to limit it to 4. And I listen as they're arguing, trying to come up with the 4, and I can go 5 or 6. But if you just start small and simple, let the kids get involved.
I love that. What a great idea.
Yeah.
Definitely. The buy-in is definitely important. And I'll say that it's important for a child as much as it is for an adult. When I started my journey, my family didn't come with me, and I was the one who was making all the meals or the majority of the meals. And, it got really hard for me to make what I was feeling, intuitively feeling was hurting me. And how could I say that it's potentially not hurting them too?
Yes.
And how can I, not only present and put this in front of them, but how can I encourage them to go down this path that I've now shifted from and see some of the dangers that are facing them if they do. And so I had to get to the point where I was like, look, I've got to take care of me, and I can't do this for you anymore. And they were supportive, but I got teased a lot on the front end. Oh, she's just got to eat her stuff, But then it became, and I guess because of the changes, the improvements that I made, it shifted to, and I don't know if I asked for it or it just happened, but it shifted to, we're ordering out tonight and we're going to order from this place. What would you like? I was looking and I saw they have this and they have that, and I know you like this and you like that. And maybe even if you get this, you can take off the meat because I don't do meat anymore. And it's like, okay, not only are they hearing me, but they're feeling me. And that is such a beautiful reciprocation of love. And have you had people, some of your clients, experience something similar?
Yes, absolutely. So, one thing that I require is that a parent work with the child. So I don't accept children as a client by themselves without a parent who's willing to work with them, because it can become a period of isolation. Kind of, you were the mom, you were going through it. That was really your choice. When we're looking at children and not forcing, but really, telling them this is how you need to eat. I require a parent to eat that journey with them, basically go along that journey as well. Because if not, the emotional trauma on the child can be so detrimental. So I ask that a parent come along with them. I also ask, so one recommendation is that the home is safe for especially during the first 6 months of healing, that, whoever the client is that and that's why I love working with families. If it's a child and someone who's working really hard, all those temptations in the home are hard. So, for you didn't want meat. So you were probably disgusted when you smelt it. I know I got to that point where, like it's hard for me sometimes now to even smell an egg.
Yeah.
And it's
Mhm.
like I can smell it.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
but if we're talking about, gluten and dairy, there's a lot of appealing foods, the cheeses, the yogurts, the ice cream, or the bread and the muffin. And if those things are in the house while someone's embarking on a journey, it's very tempting, it's hard, it's depressing. Um, Now, our home being completely gluten and dairy free, if someone in our home that tolerates dairy and gluten easier wants that, we have it as a treat. And that's the other thing that I try to let people know, like, then it becomes almost like a field trip. Let's get out of the house. It's a treat. Like you said, let's order out tonight. Let's find one of those restaurants that offers variety. Um, and and just having that person that can, your family that can help empower you is great. Now, if not, you're working on a journey by yourself. You just got to stick to it. You've got to look at the light at the end of the tunnel. I know for myself, I do not I look at it like a railroad track. I don't jump off the railroad track very often. My car stays pretty steady. If it veers slightly, but I get back on track very quickly because I know I'm not going to feel well the next day.
Mhm.
I know my skin's not going to look good in 2 to 3 days. And for, someone like myself that's on camera, I do a lot of virtual appointments with my clients, or I'm face to face with them. If I always regret it because I feel like I need to, also be one to show my health. So if I jump off track, I'm jumping back on real quick. Because this is not a plan of perfectionism. Nobody's perfect. It's not at all meant that we never have these foods that are outside of our nutrition bubble. It just means that when we have those, that we understand the consequences, we make a conscious decision to have them, and we know we can come back into our nutrition bubble quickly, to minimize that ongoing effect of getting into chronic illness or chronic disease. It's one thing to have an upset stomach. And if you go out with your friends or, your friends on a Friday night and you can afford to have that upset stomach on Saturday, then it was worth it. You know what? It was worth it to socialize and have that fun. But if you've got to get up on, and sing on church at church on Sunday morning, then Sunday night's not the night to go out and derail. So it's really about making those conscious decisions. And you can do that. Like you started out this call with, or this episode with listening to your body. If when we learn to listen to our body, know the consequences, then we can make those conscious decisions.
So I love that, conscious decisions and knowing uh, what we're hearing when we're listening.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about the gut in the conversation. How does the gut typically say, "Hey, I'm not so good over here," or "Pay attention to this," or what are some of the things that our gut might be telling us that we've kind of put off as, "Oh, that's natural," when it's really not? Or, you know, maybe I'll let me drink some water, that'll help. And it does, but it doesn't. So
Mhm.
tell us some of the things that our gut might say to us that we need to hear in truth.
Yes. I spent probably 30 years ignoring my gut screaming at me. And when I say that, I mean seriously, like people, even in high school, would joke about how after I ate, my stomach would gurgle and talk. Um, and since I cleaned up my nutrition, it does not gurgle and it does not talk unless I eat dairy. And, so it's kind of that conscious decision. And if I eat dairy, I will lay in bed at night and my husband's like, oh my gosh, it's screaming again. But you know, I ignored it for years, Beelan. I mean, it's the most comical thing, because it used to be, it's not that it hurt. And that's what's funny. We're often looking for, am I constipated? Am I having diarrhea? Am I bloated? I will tell you, all the gallbladder issues today drive me crazy. All the gallbladders being taken out. I wish I could get in touch with people. And my husband was even on the pre-op schedule for gallbladder removal. And I looked, and this was at the time when he was kind of like your family. He was not on board with me. He thought I was crazy. He was okay with me taking some doing these things for our son because he had a disease, you know what I mean? But like for other people in the family who had not been diagnosed, it's like, this is crazy. But he was on the pre-op schedule to have his gallbladder taken out. And I looked at him and I said, just give me 3 months. 3 months. And he is so impressed. This has been 8 years ago. He has his gallbladder. Everyone around him that had the gallbladder taken out has extreme problems eating healthy fat, any type of sugar. I mean, avocados, even olive oil, coconut oil, all those yummy things. They have a hard time eating that because that is the job of the gallbladder. So, it doesn't have to be that extreme. It can be the stomach talking, but it can also be the skin. I've talked about the skin, the eczema, acne, back acne. I hear a lot of women who are so frustrated with their back acne, and I see that very commonly related to their diet and their nutrition and what they're eating. But it can be hormones, adrenals. I really like when I was talking about the communication earlier, it's hard to fix all these other pieces of our system if we don't take care of the engine, basically our gut. And I often talk about it like a car. If you go and get your car tuned up, you're not just going to ask them to look at the spark plugs. You're going to ask them to run a full diagnostic check. And that's where we look at the gut as that centralized location. The hormones, the insulin, all those other things are basically just spark plugs. And if all you're going to do is focus on the spark plug and not the engine, you're not going to, I hear a lot of people say, oh, I've tried for years and it hadn't worked for me. And I'm like, what have you tried? Even blind food sensitivity and elimination diets. I always test for candida overgrowth, candida, SIBO. Those can be some underlying factors when we're looking at Crohn's and colitis, and people will eliminate the top food allergens. But a lady I recently worked with, tomatoes was her biggest trigger. And until she had been diagnosed with Sjogren's autoimmune condition, had not shed tears, had saliva in years. And removing tomatoes helped her tremendously overcome that so she could have those emotional, just being able to cry. When you can't cry for your child, when your child's hurt, or, it becomes an emotional battle as well.
Traumatic events. Well, I have so enjoyed this. You've brought such wonderful wisdom and stories to our audience today. And so, Jennifer, as we're wrapping up, is there like one major piece of information, wisdom, that you would like to share with our audience before we part today?
Yes. So your body tells the story. There's some simple testing, like I mentioned, one of the finger prick test. There's some simple testing that can really give you amazing results on where to start so you're not lost. Staying in this world of lost and confusion and going to doctors and the doctors telling you that everything looks good when you don't feel good. Don't accept that as an answer. I want to empower you to like Velan said, learn to listen to your body and be the gatekeeper of not only your home, but your mouth and your own body, your nutrition. You know, we've got to watch what we bring into our home, watch what we put in our mouth. And if you have a competitive bone in your body at all, I told you all my kids play sports, so we do. I tell them all the time, when you're putting something in your mouth, ask yourself, does this serve me well, or is this going to harm me? You know, and just ask. And there are times we make the decision, okay, like I said, to have the cake and eat it too. But it's every day there is a decision. Is this going to serve me well, or is it not? And then just make those decisions well.
Beautiful. Thank you. I love that because every day and at numerous times of the day, we get to ask ourselves that question and empower ourselves with better answers than we could have ever thought that we would give ourselves. And it's a matter of, you know, this whole movement of self-love that we have recently been experiencing. That's a piece of self-love that is one of the first things that we can do for ourselves. Ask ourselves, is this going to serve me, or is it going to hurt me? And if it's going to hurt you, then say, never mind. And it's okay, because your body will thank you, your mind will thank you. We didn't even get into really the fact that the gut and the brain are so interconnected. Maybe we'll have to do this again and really focus on the brain as the central point of the conversation, because the brain really reacts to what's happening in the gut in a major way. And asking yourself that question allows the brain, you know, conscious, subconscious, to come in to participate. And our brain only wants to keep us safe. And a lot of times it will put pleasing us over keeping us safe, because that's what we've taught it. But it's time to change that and really ask the question and hear the answer. So Jennifer, thank you so much for bringing this in. I've made a note. We're doing the next one on more of this brain conversation between the brain and the gut, so that our audience can really understand a little more of the dynamics, because that was so simplified and understandable, but there's some really juicy science behind all of that. And so thank you everyone for joining us today. We have got this show that we'd love for you to comment on below, share with your friends and family, share with people you don't know in the groups that you're a part of. Just helping to get the message out that using lifestyle and food as medicine is an option that we now want to be more conscious of, more focused on. And you've just heard some great information here from Jennifer Strother, and you're going to hear more when she comes back to join us.
Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. I so appreciate you and all that you do. I mean, gracious and mighty, the families that have been struggling that now can see that there are solutions and there are people out there who can help. So, audience, this is for you. Below the video, comment. Let Jennifer know that you appreciated the information that she shared, and join us next week when we have another episode of the Health, Wisdom, and Wealth Show. And until then, remember, be well, live, love, and be a bigger positive impact maker in your world. And we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye.